Howdy, it's Uncle Paul, and I finally have a low-carb recipe for one of my all-time favorite meals. Well, one of my favorite meals is chicken and dumplings. And for a long time, ever since I've been doing low-carb or for cooking my own low-carb meals, I've wanted to replicate chicken and dumplings. And of course, the main thing is the dumplings. What do you use for dumplings? Well, here are the ingredients minus the chicken. I forgot to put the chicken out on the counter. But the first thing is 2 cups of chicken broth, which typically is 0 carbs or not much more than that for those 2 cups. And then 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. That's going to be approximately 8 maybe a little bit more carbs. Then the thickening agent I use is Thicken Up Clear, and I put in 2 little scoops, and they're 1 carb per scoop, and it does have xanthan gum in it. You can get those for $11 or $12, I think, at like Walmart or Walgreens. Then there's the big thing that matters most as far as carbs, and that's the dumplings. I use low carb flour tortillas for that, and I like to usually use the Mission brand, but they didn't have any at the store, and that's a different brand. But typically I would use a full package of the Mission low carb 2 net grams per flour tortilla, and I cut them up in like 1 to 2 inch squares to make up my dumplings, and then a couple of tablespoons of butter. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my 2 cups of chicken broth. I may add a little bit more, and 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. I'm just going to crank this up on high so it'll get to boiling. Well, this is getting close to boiling, so I'm going to go ahead and add a scoop of this Thicken Up. We're going to start off with that. So what I generally do with this recipe is I just get some kind of chicken flavoring here, and I just sprinkle a little bit of it on there to help out with the flavoring. Okay, well, it's now to rolling boil, so I'm going to start adding my tortillas, my flour tortillas. Get them stirred up. Now, these tortillas aren't going to necessarily plump up much or get, fluffy or anything like that. And they will a little bit, but the main thing, it softens them up. And they do just fine. They have a good flavor. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in a second scoop. I'm not going to heap it this time. I'm going to go ahead and put some of this chicken seasoning. I've already salted and peppered, but I'll probably add some more. So this is probably maybe a teaspoon at most. Okay. Those dumplings are softened now. One of the ingredients that I forgot to mention with all my other ones earlier, of course, is the chicken. This is a rotisserie, kind of a small rotisserie chicken. I got it at HEB, deboned it and everything. So it's been in the fridge and it's cold, but of course it's already cooked, but it'll warm up real fast, and it's time to go ahead and put the chicken in. There you go. Get that all stirred in. And this makes 3 or 4 decent sized bowls of the... The total amount of carbs in this whole pot is probably 27 or 28 grams. The key, of course, is the flour tortillas, the low-carb flour tortillas. When I would make this, using the unhealthy version, I would use biscuits. And depending on the brand and the type of biscuit, generally one biscuit is going to be 25 to 27 grams of carbs. So one biscuit would be more than that whole pot right there. So about 4 different servings would be 6.5 to 7 grams of carbs. So that's not bad for a meal in a day, and it definitely does hit the spot as far as you know, the satisfying that chicken and dumpling craving. Definitely worth a try. Well, it is a rainy Saturday afternoon, and that video you saw there, the boys apparently had no place to go Friday night, quarantine, lockdown, all that situation, and so they all played poker together with their dad. So I don't know how long it's been since that's happened, or if I don't know that they've all played poker together. Actually, they've played cards, but I'm sure that was years ago. So I heard them up till around 1:30 in the morning. I think they shut down shortly after that, but there are 2 left at the table, and they just now started finishing up the game. But anyway, so I got a question from one of my subscribers a while back, from Rick, and he asked this: if I remember correctly, you have a Big Agnes Fly Creek UL2 tent, which is what I have also. Well, I have a Big Agnes Copper Spur UL2. What are your thoughts on using Tyvek or similar material under the tent? Did you use something under the tent on your AT hikes? I don't think you can get a footprint for this tent. Is the bottom of the tent truly waterproof? Okay, so like I said, mine is a Copper Spur. So, you know, it's real similar, I would think, to the Fly Creek. But anyway, I do, every time I've gone on a backpacking trip, I have taken this. And this is the actual footprint for the Copper Spur. So I've had this from the very beginning. Now, the only time I did not take anything at all for underneath my tent to use as a footprint was last summer when Adam and I hiked up in New Jersey. And so I really wanted to leave it behind to lessen the amount of weight in my pack. And so I didn't take anything and just took a chance of setting it up. You got to watch for rocks and roots and twigs, anything that's going to puncture a hole, of course, in the bottom of your tent. You don't want to compromise the floor, because that is really when water will get in it. I have set up my tent in small puddles and stuff like that, and I did on this trip. And there's been rain that's gotten in between. You got to be careful about that, but it's gotten in between the footprint and the floor of the tent. Not much. So all I know is that I don't have holes or tears in the bottom of my tent, and I've never gotten water in it. At least the only water that seems to get in it is from what is on my clothes or on my whatever gear I have when I get in the tent. It's always a small amount. So I've never had that kind of a problem. But probably in the future, I would at least use Tyvek or probably the footprint that goes with this tent, just because I don't want to mess up a tent. I don't want to spend money on another one. So Rick, thanks for the question. I hope I've answered them. By the way, let me just say that this weighs 7 ounces, this footprint for my tent. Good Sunday morning, everybody. Well, let me just say one final time how excited I am about my low-carb chicken and dumpling recipe. I'm just really thrilled to have that in my life. Anyway, also I want to tell you guys that for those of you who are following along with me reading my little book, I'm going to begin once again this week reading a chapter and finishing up. There's 4 more chapters, so I'll get back to that this week. Now, I want to give this week's coffee shout out, and that's going to go to Rick. And it is the same Rick that asked me the question about the footprint of my tent earlier. So it's the same Rick, and he says this in his email. He starts off Sunday morning with coffee with me, and he says that he makes it in a pot, not a Keurig. He makes a pot of 8 o'clock hazelnut coffee, black. He goes on and says, I wish there was a good story why this mug, and I'll show you his picture in a second, why this mug from the Ernest Hemingway Museum in Key West is my favorite. The truth is, I have not been there. Someone left the mug in a cabinet at work years ago, and somehow I guess I just sort of adopted it. Haven't we all been there, I guess? And it has grown on me ever since. Drinking a cup of black hazelnut from it is comforting and just provides a simple pleasure. Well, what more can we ask for? So here's a picture of Rick in his favorite mug. Thank you, Rick, and thank you, everybody, for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and remember, always look up. I'll see you next week.